Good morning, everyone. I hope this is recording. Um, I'm giving it a try from my mobile phone because the iPad did not work. There's not enough space on my iPad, and my whole work yesterday night was in vain. I'm so sad about that. I hope I can summarize it and I can give the same thoughts as I did yesterday, hopefully in a shorter form, because yesterday it lasted 4 hours and I went through the details. Um, so let's see if I can finish it in half an hour today. This is going to be about a, an article on Bulgarian and the difference between the Bulgars, the Bulgarians, and the Turks, the early Turks. Um, so I'm going to summarize it. The headlines are important, and this article was written by Professor Dr. Plamen S. Tsvetkov. The origin of the Bulgarians, the origin of the Slavs, and the Turks he is discussing in this paper. And he's mentioning that the Turkic Bulgars are Turks, the modern Bulgars are named Bulgarians or the Russian Bulgars, but they're actually the same. And the Turkic-speaking Bulgarians, or the Bulgars, because they are called Bulgars, and the Slavic-speaking Bulgars, they actually have many similarities, and they are the same, only with a slightly vocabulary difference. But even the language is similar, that's what he says. And he also says that Proto-Bulgars, naming them Proto-Bulgars or naming them Bulgarians doesn't make any sense. That's what he says. And Proto-Bulgars are actually Bulgars, the real Bulgars. That's what he claims. And then he says the bottom line of this article is that the Bulgars were and remain now the Bulgars, the people with ancient and rich history. That means the Turkic Bulgars. Bulgarian is a Ural-Altaic language. This is very important. And he's summarizing it here, actually, under strong influence of Indo-European languages, whereas the Slavic languages are an Indo-European branch, under a strong Ural-Altaic influence. Yes? So let's make that distinction here between the languages. So Bulgarian is not a Slavic language. It is a Ural-Altaic language with strong Slavic influences. It's like being Turkish under the effect of Persian and under the effect of Semitic vocabulary. Yes, so only the vocabulary is actually influenced here, but the word structure and the family is different. It's Ural-Altaic, so you cannot distinguish between Uralic and Altaic. Scholars have to be very, very careful and very, very wide awake in this matter. Why that? Because the Bosnians, the Chuvash, the Hrvats, and even the Kumans, I think, he's mentioning the Croats here, and these are all Balkan people, and they have Bešenjo, that means Bajanak Pečenik. The Bosnians, they also have Bajanak Pečenik, yes? So they are all this Turkish tribe. We cannot say they are a different kind of people. That's what I also claim. And I prove my view right, most of them. This analysis is applicable to the Rus and Russian state. Um, and okay, where institutions, dynasties, language, folklore, even a Tsar were deeply rooted in the Turkic people. Yes? So this is important. The Balto-Slavic concept in the origin of the Slavs needs to be studied without prejudice. Yes, that's the problem of the Western scholars, actually, that they are full of prejudice when they study these languages. So it is a wrong study, and it leads to false conclusions. Um, okay, so, and then it goes on. The Turks, the Slavs, and the origin of the Bulgarians. Most scholars accept the truth that the Bulgars and the Bulgarians, mentioned in Chinese, Byzantine, Arabic, and so on, they are from the 1st to the 10th centuries AD, have little in common with those Bulgarians who are today the majority of the population in the Balkans or the Danubian Bulgaria. That's what they claim. But it is not so. In the language dictionaries, you can find that the Bulgars are defined as Turkic peoples who formed the state of the southern Balkans, right? And it says here in the dictionary, they were largely assimilated by a local Slavic population. Meanwhile, the Bulgarians are, according to the same dictionary, natives and inhabitants of Bulgaria who speak a South Slavic language. If this is in the dictionary and it's false, right? This is the truth now. However, everything seems to indicate that the deeply rooted myth about the Slavic origin of the Bulgarians is motivated mainly by political considerations. Very sad. And here it gives some political figures. So when Mauro Orbini published his Kingdom of the Slavs in 1601 AD, everyone made a clear distinction between the Bulgarians and the Slavs, eager to see the emergence of a great and unified Slavic empire. Mauro Orbini assigned a Slavic descent to a number of definitely non-Slavic people, such as the Goths, the Khazars, and even the Etruscans. This is wrong. The classification should go together. Etruscans, Khazars, and Goths are the Bulgars. I mean, they must be included with the Bulgars, right? They are the same tribes, the same groups of people, or related tribes. Naturally enough, the Bulgarians were also included in the Slavic family. It should be noted in this regard that Orbini denied the very existence of separate Slavic entities and considered that the Russians, the Poles, the Czechs, the Slovaks, and the Slovenes, the Croats, and the Serbs were just tribes of one and the same nation. Well, okay. At a later stage, the idea about the Slavic origin of the Romanians and of the Bulgars was strongly supported by Russia, for the simple reason that these two nations lay on the road of Russia's expansion between Constantinople and the Straits. In a 1769 manifesto, the Russian Empress Catherine II claimed that the Slavs of Moldova, Wallachia, Montenegro, Bulgaria, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Albania had come to the Balkans from Russia. Yes, so they came later. It was not their homeland. There were the ancient Bulgars already, and the Thracians, the Khazars, the Pechenegs, whoever lived there, the Hungarians, Yes, they were all Turks. And the Hungarians, who became Slavs, they came later. And you see, when some regions are occupied later, they start bullying the the original people. This is generally the case. Uh, you can give very many examples of this, but I don't want to go into this because then it is considered political, right? The ones that come later, they always start bullying the former communities, the the more ancient communities. That's very sad. Looking for foreign support against the Ottoman rule, many Bulgarian national leaders turned out to be quite susceptible to the propaganda of Russian Pan-Slavism. Even the father of the Bulgarian national revival, uh, Paisi of Kilander, who didn't like the Russians and the Serbs at all, readily accepted Orbini's theories about the Slavic origin of the Bulgarians. As a matter of fact, he dreamt about the restoration of an ancient Bulgarian tsardom, and any hint at the possible kinship with the Turks was out of the question. So, how can the Bulgars and the Turks be related? Whoa. For this reason, he deliberately distorted a popular legend of his time, according to which the Bulgarians were relatives both to the Slavs, to the Russians, that's what he claimed, and to the Turks. In his Slavo-Bulgarian history, Paisi simply omitted the relationship with the Turks. That's what the Westerners mostly did. Very sad. After 1601, all written resources make a clear distinction between the Bulgarians and the Slavs, who are considered. So, you see here, until the 1600s, the truth is written, and later it changes. It's like today, the more the scholars come to the near future, the more they change the original versions, the original forms. How biased they become, who are considered as entirely alien, right? It's, wait a minute, entirely, and often hostile to each other. For instance, in the late 11th century Bulgarian, is mentioned, convinced that Lion Bulgarians are just a third part of the Ottomans. In his eyes, the only difference between the Bulgarians and the Cumans was that the Bulgarians were Christians, while the Cumans were still pagans, although they are related. The Cumans and Bulgars, the Pechenegs, and all these tribes, they are related. They're all Turk tribes. The issue of the linguistic differences between the Cumans and the Kupchaks has no answer. The highest achievement, so these are all the Turkish tribes, was determined that Cumans were actually ethnically different from the Kupchaks, leaving plenty of room for further research. Even in the 13th and 14th centuries, when there was already considerable differences between the separate Slavic peoples, foreign observers notified that the Slavs had no direct relationship with the Bulgarians or with the Wallachians. Thus, the Venetian Dandolo wrote about the Danaria as the country of the southern Slavs, while Bulgaria was the country of the Bulgarians, and Wallachia was the country of the Wallachians. You see here how they distinguish. I mean, they give names and they distinguish just to blur the minds. Even though there was no single southern Slavic, Bulgarian, or Wallachian state, so they were all together. The Serbs were split among several principalities, while the Croatians were under the supremacy of the Hungarians. I didn't know that. That's interesting. The Bulgarians lived in their turn in at least 10 different kingdoms. So they had kingdoms, the Bulgarians, right? They were noble people and principalities, and there were no less than 2 Romanian and Vlachian states. There were no Romanian states then, not in a rich number. Scholars often refer to such phrases as, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, the Slavs are Bulgarians, Slavs from Bulgaria, they distinguish them, right? Or Slavs called Bulgarians, which are found in a number of primary sources as an evidence of the Slavic character of the Bulgarians. And this has been taught to these people. How sad. It's like saying to the Turkish people that you are not related with the Hungarians, or you are not related to the Bulgars, right? And you're different people. It's so sad. However, or it's like, oh, the Turks came to Anatolia in 1071. Oh, what a great lie this is. But Slavs, who were called Bulgarians because they had either spent some time under Bulgarian rule or emigrated from Bulgaria. As Boba points out, the Slavs from Pannonia, he gives names, and the Carpathian foothills were often referred to as Sclavi ex-Bulgaria, since back in the 9th and 10th century. So these places were all actually Bulgarian places, Bulgarian regions. These areas were part of the Bulgarian Empire. You see here? The theory of the Slavic origin of the present-day Bulgarians does not seem to be confirmed by the archaeological data either. They make us believe that the original Bulgarian people were the Slavs, and later they became Turkified, though it's vice versa. They were first Turks, later they mixed with the Slavs, but they are still close to, in origin and in DNA studies, they are still close to their relatives, the Turks. So some scholars, it says here, hasten to proclaim that the primitive, non-professional pottery found in many Balkan areas is the product of Slavs. However, such pottery was characteristic in the ancient Thracians. So this means here that it was also present in Anatolia, right? Not in Greek, but Anatolia. And the Greeks, they took this style from us, as well as the Persians, right? Belonging to the local Dridu culture. Okay, so they called this local culture Dridu culture. As a matter of fact, again, so many names. As a matter of fact, it is impossible to judge about the particular ethnicity by the non-professional pottery, since it is nothing more than a local domestic product of quite primitive technology. So this was the local people. They were most probably the Thracians, and Troy was maybe their capital. The Proto-Aegean people, right? Has nothing to do with the Greeks today. The Greeks just occupied those areas. They came later. The ones who occupy generally and claim their land are generally the ones who come later. The ones who bully are generally the ones who come later. Moreover, the architecture of medieval cities like Pliska and Preslav has nothing to do with the Slavs, but it is related in the architecture to the cities whose ruins are basically the lands once inhabited by the Bulgarians or the Bulgars in their long way from Asia to Europe. So these cities, these places are the first original places of the first Bulgars, right? Nothing to do with the Slavs. the Bulgar city in the Caucasus, for example, right? And many other Bulgar cities. So they came from Asia, most probably to the Caucasus, and from there they spread to the Balkans. Practically, none of the human skulls and skeletons that are found in Bulgaria and Macedonia have any Slavic features whatsoever. The same applies to the present day Bulgarians, who, according to the most experts, belong to the local Mediterranean race, different from the remaining Southern Europeans. So they are even different from the other Europeans, the modern Bulgarians, right? But identical, this is important, with the racial characteristics of the medieval Bulgarians, that means the Turks. On the other hand, the Southern European racial type is completely absent from the Eastern and Western Slavs. There are no Southern European elements in the skulls found in the medieval Slavic graveyards. The Southern Slavs, namely the Serbs and the Croats, belong to their turn to the so-called Dinaric type, or the Southern European subrace. This Dinaric type is less pronounced in the plains, while the skulls of the medieval Slavic graveyards of Serbia and Croatia have all the features proper to the Slavic subrace, which is totally absent from Bulgaria and Macedonia. In other words, in the case of the Serbs and the Croats, one may talk about a mixture between the Slavic and the significant native elements, while the Bulgarian subrace is entirely different from the Slavic racial type. It goes without saying that the Bulgarians were and, of course, are far from being a pure race, but everything seems to indicate that the Bulgarian subrace is by no means a mixture between Slavic and non-Slavic elements. That means they were pure. It is a mixture of Iranoids, Balkan natives, and a limited amount of Mongoloids. Yes. So I think they were Caucasoids, the most original Bulgar people, right? We should not distinguish between Bulgarian and Bulgar because they're close. It's like calling Turks and Turkic people or Turkmens, right? They're all very close together, related to each other. They're not different people. Dinaric, it says here, the Iranoids. It explains now the Iranoids in the coon apparently used by Dr. Kalev. Iranoids, the Iranid race, the Irano-Afghans. They are the Irano-Afghans, okay? The anthropologist Kuhn described the Iranoid as long-faced, high-headed, and nose-hooked Iranoid. Interesting. Races of Europe. Two taxonomically different and opposing morphologies, which indicates that testing which results in a defined category may not exist at all. There is no category, so there are several phenotypes. Nowadays, it is confirmed by the genetic terminology may be faulty. The underlying analysis of Zeltov remains unaffected in respect to the osteological results. Within this definition, Kuhn stated, if we are correct, in identifying the corded people with the introduction of Altaic speech into Europe, so the corded ware used the Altaic language, yes? If we consider that the corded ware in Europe, they spoke an Altaic language, Chuvash. Then the R branch of Turkish. Then the further identification of the corded race type with the non-Mongoloid modern Turks and the Afghan racial type of the Irano-Afghan plateau makes it seem possible that there was, in remote food-producing times, an ancestral block of people. So they were more ancestral to the land. That's what he says. Living in that plateau, who spoke languages ancestral to Altaic. That means related to Uralic, Sumerian, or both. So Europe once upon a time spoke an Altaic language, a Uralic language. You see this from the runic inscriptions, right, that they found. And everywhere you find your runic inscriptions, I think there was a Uralic Altaic language. And it is all connected. They were one people, related to each other. So the coded were as well. Some of the peoples who formed that block presumably moved northward onto the Central Asiatic grasslands. This change of scene on the part of these early agriculturalists may have had two effects. The introduction of agriculture into the oasis of Turkestan and into Mongolia. So they went into Turkestan and Mongolia, and the development of pastoral nomadism, by some of the immigrants, with the subsequent rise of horse culture. This step in our speculative structure leads logically to the question of the origin of the Turks, having placed Ural-Altaic speaking white men of a special Mediterranean type, still found in Iran and Afghanistan, in Turkmenistan, in Turkestan and Mongolia. It is not difficult to suppose that Mongoloid peoples, originally hunters, were attracted to the plains from their forests and rivers by the advantages of the new economy, and that they assimilated in adopting it. So what he says here actually is that the ancient Turks, they came from the west into what is called Mongolia and into Central Asia, etc. So not the modern Turks, the most ancient Turks, they were already in the Caucasus, they were already in the Balkans, they were already in parts of Europe, the Kordovere. These were Ural-Altaic people already who had come into that area before the Z branch was spoken of Turkish. And later they affected the Central Asian and Mongoloid communities. I mean, not the Mongolians, not, yeah, I mean, the ones who had slanted eyes. Okay, that's an interesting theory, and it's logical. It seems logical, yes, yes. I believe that there were waves of Turks coming into Anatolia, and also there were already some proto-Turkic groups already living in Europe, who were more related to the Uralic part rather than the Altaic part. At first, at the beginning, they were all connected to each other. Yes, later they split. Maybe that's why there are now less similarities between Uralic and Altaic in vocabulary terms, but the structure is very, very similar. So you cannot distinguish them. I mean, but if you, for example, compare Hungarian to the Turkish languages or the Turkic languages, especially the R branch, you will see that it is more similar to each other. There are more common features between Turkish and Turkic languages and Hungarian and Bulgarian, he claims, and also Chuvash, than comparing Turkish to Mongolian. Yes, so it is not a good classification, the languages. Within his edition, Kuhn stated, did we say this? Kuhn, the Races of Europe. Different scholars applied. Now let me see. Short by, okay, I think we did that paragraph. Within the definition, Mongolite modern Turks, Lombong, okay, we did that too. The food producing times, we did that. Okay, Anau culture, and in this step, okay, we did that too. I'm so sorry, I lost my page. So, Mongolite peoples, we said. Mongolia, it is not difficult to suppose that the Mongolian peoples, originally hunters, were attracted to the plains, we said, of their economy, the the early Turks from the west, and that they assimilated in adopting it those of the white immigrants with whom they were in contact. We can also see this in the Tokharians and the Uyghurs. Yes? So Kuhn's Iranoid position is corroborated by the spread of A1 AY DNA gene. Kuhn's Ural-Altaic Mongoloid position is corroborated by the linguistical studies Johansen and which in turn are corroborated by genetical results. Okay. Now page 5. I hope I can finish this in 1 hour. So, Buryat, Mongol, Tungus, etc. DNA circa 1500 AD. So this study now. As can be readily seen, genetically, the Paleoasiatic and Mongolic peoples are totally incongruous, pointing to independent genesis and consequently independent languages. Yeah, if you take Tungusic languages, Mongolic languages, or the Evenk Buryat languages and the Japonic languages and the Turkic languages, right? They are not that close, right? They are in the same family, yes, that's right, but the vocabulary is completely different. Most of the vocabulary is completely different. But maybe there are small similarities between Mongolian and the Turkic languages and Hungarian. So the Slavic theory about the origin of the Bulgarians is based mainly on the argument that today the Bulgarians speak a Slavic language. So this is not true. Indeed, most philologists claim that about 80% of the Bulgarian words have more or less identical Slavic counterparts. However, when you have a closer look at these words, it leads to the discovery that too many words existing both in Bulgarian and the Slavic languages have, now this is important, a Ural-Altaic rather than an Indo-European origin. So it became Indo-European later. It was originally Ural-Altaic in the root form. Yes? That's what I always claim. Even though the Slavic idioms belong, no doubt, to the Indo-European family. For instance, for a long time, it has been now, he describes now words, he compares the words now, that such words as, now very important, tovar, load, kettle, it means davar in Turkish, yes? And it was tier, it derived into tier in German. So there is no German language. There is no Proto-German. Proto-German is a Ural-Altaic language. Yes, it still has a vocabulary of Proto-Turkic words, which they cannot explain. How can you explain tear while English says animal? It's the same with kniga, book. It's kitap in Turkish. You see the similarities are very clear. Zupan, governor, and otets, father. Most probably it comes from ata. Are probably early Altaic loanwords in the Slavic languages. Not probably, surely. In the same vein, the Bulgarian word diado and Slavic dead grandfather. Yeah, we say dede, dead, diado, is